Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy with our special guest, Hollis. Hollis, you host a podcast called the 21st Century Disability, where you analyze the modern world and how it's changing how society views disability. Tell me, what inspired you to start your show?
You know what, Nancy, what originally inspired me to start my show was, I had graduated from my master's degree in history just before the pandemic had started. And I was wanting to give lectures and guest lectures, but it was 2 or 3 years after my education, and I really, through the pandemic, I couldn't give any lectures, and my medical spill after the pandemic had really impacted my life, and so I sort of saw podcasting as a medium to do exactly that. When I first started out my podcast, the first season or two was just me monologuing about ableism, accessibility, what life is like with a disability, and other issues with disability.
So, one of the things that I find, again, with my clients is that there is a change in the way they view themselves. They were the breadwinner. They were the loving father or mother out there doing things with their children, engaging in social activities. And because of whatever's happening to them, either physically, psychiatrically, cognitively, their view of themselves and their role in the modern world has changed. And they obviously and legitimately have a problem dealing with that change. As your disease has progressed, have you gone through something similar? And what suggestions do you have for people in terms of how they view their role, their changing role in their personal lives? And then we'll get to the question of in society.
Yeah. I mean, I've always had this similar a similar disability. My life hasn't gone through so much change. However, the big change for me was like during my graduate degree, for instance, I was living on a campus at university. Um, all on my own. And then, 2 or 3 years later, now I'm living in a complex care unit. So my life has made a dramatic shift. For someone who has gone from not being disabled and, as you said, being the breadwinner, and is now having to learn how to adapt to a new lifestyle, I would say, just turn to community. Speaking as someone who is disabled, I benefit greatly from being a member of the disabled community. For instance, I've got friends who have similar disabilities as I do, and I founded a power wheelchair hockey league, and so we play an adaptive sport together, and together you know what each other's ability is. And really, when you are a member of a community of people who are going through the same thing as you can empathize with people, and really it just feels like you don't have a disability because you're just a part of the group.
So, how do you think the modern world has helped those who have disabilities?
It certainly helps people with disabilities in a number of ways, but I think the main way is, in my perspective, anyways, and there are many different perspectives of this, but in my way, in my perspective, it's allowed the social model of disability to become more apparent, to be true, in that if the environment around you is able to eliminate the barriers that your disability forces you to overcome, then your disability really disappears. Whereas, you know, in the early 20th century, when we didn't have power wheelchairs or elevators or uh, lifts or things like that, people with disabilities, even basic disabilities, would have been bedridden. Whereas in the 21st century now, as I say, it's 21st century disability, our disabilities are able to be, we can use technology to overcome barriers.
But where do you think the society falls short in terms of both accessibility and inclusion?
In terms of accessibility and inclusion, I think really still a lot of society's expectations are and their judgments are still what's holding us back. For instance, a lot of people see somebody in a power chair or in a wheelchair and think that, automatically assume that they have a cognitive disability as well. And so, you would speak down to someone in a wheelchair as if they're a child. Or if you are interviewing somebody for a new position, and if one of the interviewees is in a wheelchair, or has another disability, if you are not disabled yourself, you might make assumptions like, oh, well, you can't, or you cannot do this job position because of X and Y. But in reality, you might not know that um, that person already has an ability to overcome that barrier, but you just have to learn how, and you just have to be open minded.
So, Hollis, there's often a disconnect between public policy, which is generally well intentioned, and real life experiences. And you just touched upon that in the employment setting. Is there one policy change that you think would make the biggest difference in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, I live in Canada, and I benefit from what's called the Ontario Disability Support Program. And so this is a support pension program that goes out to people with disabilities who can't, because of their disability, cannot um, maintain a full-time job. And so they will help you pay for your medical bills. For instance, they paid for 75% of the power chair that I am currently sitting in. In other ways, it is a program that is designed to keep disabled individuals living below the poverty line. Because, as soon as you start to earn um, a very small amount of money on a regular basis, they completely cut you off, which is ridiculous. So I think these pension programs need to be able to allow a bit more leeway in terms of um, allowing people with disabilities to earn what it is that they can and still provide the same amount of support that they are already giving.
So here in the United States, you would have been eligible for children's Social Security benefits based on your disability under your parents' earnings record. If you had become disabled as an adult, there is an earnings test. If you'd worked and had sufficient quarters of coverage, you might be eligible for something called Social Security disability benefits. And we here have limits on how much a person can earn. But as part of the benefits, if you meet the 5-step sequential evaluation test, is money benefits and medical benefits in the form of Medicare. If you didn't have enough quarters of coverage, you might be eligible for what's called SSI, which is asset-based and pays a fixed amount of benefits, and also has medical goes along with it. So it sounds like the Canadian system is a bit similar to the system here in the United States.
Yeah.
So let's take a break because I want to come back and talk about advocacy and Hollis's perspective as an advocate. So let's take a quick break.
Are you a professional with questions about your individual disability policy? You need the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. This book gives you a comprehensive understanding of your disability policy, with tips and to-dos that will assist you in submitting a winning disability application. This is one you don't want to miss. For the next 24 hours, we're giving away free copies of the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. Order yours today at disabilityclaimsforprofessionals.com.